The studio lights felt harsher than usual, bright enough to expose every micro-expression, every blink, every tightening of a jaw. Kate Winslet sat with her hands folded loosely in her lap, posture relaxed, face calm, the kind of calm that didn't come from rehearsed politeness but from certainty. Around her, the familiar hum of The View carried on as it always did, audience murmurs fading as the cameras locked in. Joy Behar leaned back in her chair, a half-smile already forming, the practiced look of someone ready to poke, to prod, to pull a reaction out of a guest for the sake of television. The conversation had started innocently enough, framed around Kate's latest project, her dedication to complex roles, her reputation for honesty in an industry built on careful image management. Kate answered warmly, speaking about storytelling, about responsibility, about how art could reflect uncomfortable truths. The audience nodded along, applause coming easily. But then Joy shifted, tilting her head slightly, voice sharpening just a touch. It was subtle, the kind of transition viewers barely noticed until it was already happening. She referenced interviews Kate had given years earlier, selectively pulling phrases, stitching them together into something that sounded far more provocative than reflective. The implication hung in the air, that Kate's views were naive at best, problematic at worst. A few co-hosts glanced sideways, sensing the tension creeping in. The audience quieted, instinctively aware they were watching the start of something unscripted. Kate didn't interrupt, she listened, fully. Her eyes stayed on Joy, not with hostility, but with focus. When Joy finished, there was a brief pause, the kind that television producers hate but moments like this demand. Kate inhaled slowly, then smiled, not sweetly, not sarcastically, but with a steadiness that immediately shifted the balance of the room. I think what's interesting, she began, her voice even and clear, is how often we simplify conversations that are meant to be complex. The audience leaned in. Kate spoke about nuance, about how sound bites erase intention, about how public figures are often asked to defend positions they don't actually hold. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't rush. Every sentence landed with precision. Joy attempted to interject, but Kate gently held her ground, not by talking over her, but by continuing without hesitation. It wasn't aggressive, it was controlled. She explained that disagreement wasn't the problem, misrepresentation was. That challenging ideas required honesty, not caricature. Her words weren't sharp, but they were unyielding. The studio atmosphere changed. What had begun as a familiar panel exchange now felt like a masterclass in composure. Kate referenced her own career, the mistakes she'd made, the lessons she'd learned, emphasizing accountability over defensiveness. She spoke about listening to people she disagreed with, about resisting the urge to score points instead of seeking understanding. Each line subtly undercut the premise of Joy's earlier framing. Joy's smile faded slightly. She tried to steer the conversation back, suggesting that public figures should expect scrutiny, especially when their words influence others. Kate nodded, agreeing, then calmly dismantled the argument. She pointed out the difference between scrutiny and distortion, between critique and performance. Her tone remained respectful, but there was no mistaking the firmness beneath it. The audience responded audibly now, scattered applause breaking through despite the show's usual rhythm. One of the co-hosts nodded vigorously, another raised her eyebrows in surprise. This wasn't the explosive shouting match some might have expected, it was something far more disarming. Kate was winning not by overpowering Joy, but by refusing to be pulled into the arena Joy had tried to create. She spoke about responsibility again, but this time she widened the lens. Responsibility of artists, yes, but also of media figures, of platforms with millions of viewers. Words mattered, she said, not just in what they expressed, but in how they framed others. Misunderstanding could be corrected, mischaracterization caused harm. The room was silent now, the weight of her words settling in. Joy attempted humor, a quick joke to diffuse the moment, but it landed flat. Kate smiled politely, acknowledging it, then continued, seamlessly returning to her point. The contrast was striking. Where Joy's approach relied on quick wit and provocation, Kate's relied on clarity and depth. It was becoming clear to everyone watching that the usual dynamics had flipped. As Kate finished her thought, she paused again, offering space rather than taking it. That pause spoke volumes. It said she wasn't there to dominate, only to be understood. Ironically, that restraint made her position unassailable. Joy shifted in her chair, papers rustling as she searched for the next angle, but the momentum had slipped from her grasp. The host's voice returned, attempting to move things along, but the energy in the studio had already changed. Viewers could feel it through their screens. This wasn't just another celebrity appearance, it was a moment of quiet confrontation, where preparation met authenticity and won. Kate leaned back slightly, her expression softening, as if to signal that the tension didn't need to escalate further. Yet the impact lingered. The audience applause that followed wasn't thunderous, but it was sustained, genuine. It carried recognition, not of a dramatic takedown, but of a rare thing on live television, someone refusing to be reduced, and doing so with grace. And as the cameras pulled back, it was clear that part one of this exchange had already left its mark. The conversation wasn't over, but the tone had been set, and Behar, for the first time that afternoon, seemed to be the one reacting rather than leading.